My cousin tried to hit every date I brought to holidays. My sister Nina has always been the star of our family. Not because she's particularly talented or accomplished, but because she's mastered the art of making everything about her. And her favorite way to stay in the spotlight? Stealing my boyfriends. It started when I was 17. His name was Jake, and he was my first real boyfriend. We'd been together for 6 months when Nina came home from college for winter break. She was 19, and she'd just broken up with her boyfriend. She said she was devastated, that she needed family support. Within 2 weeks, I caught Jake and Nina kissing in our garage. Nina cried and apologized. She said it just happened, that she was vulnerable and Jake took advantage of her grief. My parents believed her. They said I should forgive her because she was going through a hard time. They said Jake was the real villain. My father actually shook his finger at me and told me I was being selfish for making Nina's pain about myself. But I saw the way she smiled when she thought no one was looking. That triumphant little smirk that said she'd won again. It happened again with Connor when I was 20. Nina came to my birthday party in a dress that was practically lingerie, spent the whole night hanging on Connor's every word, and 2 weeks later they were dating. When I confronted her, she said, maybe if you were more fun, he wouldn't have been so easy to steal. She said it like a joke, but her eyes were cold. My mother told me I was being dramatic. That Nina and Connor had just connected naturally and I couldn't control who people fell for. She said I should be happy my sister found someone. Then there was Ethan when I was 23. Nina showed up at our family lake house for the 4th of July weekend, where I'd brought Ethan to meet everyone. She wore a bikini that left nothing to the imagination and spent 3 days brushing against him, sitting in his lap, asking him to put sunscreen on her back. By the end of the weekend, Ethan told me he thought we should see other people. I found out later he'd been texting Nina for weeks after that. When I confronted her, she laughed. Actually laughed. She said, come on, Sarah. If a guy likes me better than you, that's not my fault. Maybe you should try harder. My aunt overheard that conversation. Instead of defending me, she pulled me aside and told me I needed to work on my confidence, that jealousy wasn't attractive, that men could sense desperation. Then came David. I'd been with him for a year, the longest relationship I'd ever had. I thought maybe this one would be safe. But Nina showed up at Christmas wearing a white sweater dress that hugged every curve, and by New Year's Eve, David was making excuses to text her. They were dating by February. When I screamed at Nina, when I finally lost it and called her a manipulative, boyfriend-stealing psychopath in front of the whole family at Easter dinner, my father sent me home. He said I was ruining family events with my accusations and negativity. He said Nina couldn't help being attractive and I needed to stop blaming her for my failed relationships. My grandmother, my sweet, supposedly wise grandmother, patted my hand and said, dear, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Maybe if you were sweeter, like Nina, you'd have better luck with men. I stopped bringing men home. For 5 years, I just didn't tell my family when I was seeing someone. I kept my dating life completely separate from family events. I went to Thanksgiving and Christmas alone, watching Nina parade through a succession of boyfriends she'd stolen from me or from other women, watching my family fawn over her like she was some kind of princess. The loneliness was crushing, but at least I wasn't being humiliated anymore. Then I met Daniel. Daniel was a clinical psychologist. He specialized in personality disorders and family systems, working primarily with people who had narcissistic, histrionic, and borderline presentations. We met at a bookstore, both reaching for the same book on cognitive behavioral therapy. I was reading it for work stress, he was reading it for a professional refresher. We got coffee. We talked for 4 hours about everything from attachment theory to our favorite terrible reality TV shows. He was different from anyone I'd dated before. Thoughtful, observant, calm. He asked real questions and actually listened to the answers. He didn't try to fix me or impress me. He just saw me. The real me, not the version of myself I performed for others. We'd been together for 9 months when my mother called about Thanksgiving. She guilt-tripped me into coming, saying it had been 5 years since I'd shown up for a holiday, that my grandmother wasn't getting any younger, that family was supposed to be important to me, that I was breaking everyone's hearts with my absence. I almost said no, but Daniel asked why I was so anxious, and I told him everything. Every boyfriend Nina had stolen. Every time my parents had defended her. Every humiliation. Every time I'd been told I was the problem, that I was jealous, that I was making things up. Daniel listened carefully, taking mental notes like he did with his patients. Then he said, I'd like to meet your family. That's a terrible idea, I said. Daniel, I'm serious. Nina will destroy this. She destroys everything good in my life. It's what she does. Why does she do it? He asked, his therapist voice kicking in. Because she can. Because she's beautiful and charming and everyone always takes her side. No, Daniel said gently. I mean psychologically. What need is she fulfilling? I stared at him. No one had ever asked that before. I don't know. Validation? Attention? Proof that she's better than me? Probably all of those things, Daniel said. But here's the thing. I'm a psychologist who works with manipulative personality structures every day. I can identify these patterns in the first 5 minutes of meeting someone. I know all the tactics because I've studied them for years. He took my hand. I think I can handle your sister. Something about the way he said it, calm, clinical, confident but not arrogant, made me believe him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe him so badly that I ignored my better judgment. Okay, I said, but when this goes wrong, please don't say I didn't warn you. Thanksgiving Day arrived and my stomach was in knots. I'd barely slept. Daniel had woken me up twice from nightmares where Nina was kissing him while my family cheered. He held me each time, stroking my hair, telling me it would be okay. Daniel drove us to my parents' house in his sensible sedan. He was wearing a simple navy sweater and dark jeans, nothing flashy. He looked exactly like what he was, a steady, thoughtful professional. His hair was neat, his beard trimmed, his expression calm. Nina's car was already in the driveway. A red convertible she'd bought with money from her latest ex-boyfriend, a wealthy investment banker she'd gotten bored of after 3 months. We walked in and my mother immediately pulled me into a suffocating hug, acting like I'd returned from war. "Oh, Sarah, we've missed you so much. 5 years, can you believe it?" She said it loud enough for everyone to hear, making sure everyone knew I was the bad daughter who'd stayed away. My father shook Daniel's hand with the firm grip he always used to establish dominance. "So you're Daniel, what do you do for work?" "I'm a clinical psychologist," Daniel said evenly. "I work primarily with personality disorders." My father's eyebrows went up. "What kind of patients?" "I specialize in cluster B presentations, narcissistic, borderline, histrionic personality patterns. I also do a lot of work with family systems and interpersonal dynamics." I saw something flicker across my father's face. Discomfort, maybe, but he covered it with a hearty laugh. "Well, you'll fit right in here. We're all crazy." Everyone laughed, except Daniel, who just smiled politely. Then I saw Nina appear in the doorway to the kitchen, and my breath caught. She was wearing a tight red dress that barely qualified as Thanksgiving appropriate, the neckline plunging almost to her navel. Her hair was in perfect beach waves, her makeup flawless, smoky eyes, glossy lips. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine shoot. She was wearing heels that made her legs look impossibly long. She'd dressed for war. Her eyes locked onto Daniel immediately, and I saw the calculation happen. The assessment, the decision that he was worth taking. "You must be Daniel," she said, gliding over with the practiced grace of a runway model. "I'm Nina, Sarah's younger, more fun sister." She extended her hand, and Daniel shook it briefly. "Nice to meet you, Nina." Nina held on a beat too long, her fingers trailing across his palm as she released him. "So you're a psychologist? That must be absolutely fascinating. I've always been so interested in psychology." "Have you?" Daniel asked, his tone perfectly neutral. "Oh yes, I think understanding people is so important. Like, I'm very intuitive about emotional dynamics. I can always tell what people are really feeling, you know? People always tell me I should have been a therapist." She touched his arm lightly, casually. "I just have this natural empathy." Daniel nodded, his expression unchanged. Empathy is certainly an important trait in therapeutic work. Though it's distinct from clinical training, of course. Nina's smile tightened slightly, but she recovered. "Of course, I just mean I'm good at reading people. For instance, I can already tell you're someone who values intelligence in a partner." She glanced at me briefly, dismissively. "That must be nice for Sarah." The implication was clear. Sarah might be intelligent, but that's all she has. Daniel's expression remained neutral. "I value a lot of things in a partner. Intelligence, yes, also authenticity, emotional honesty, and genuine connection." He put his arm around my waist and kissed my temple. Nina's eyes narrowed. My mother appeared with drinks. "Nina, honey, why don't you show Daniel around the house? Give Sarah a chance to catch up with everyone." My stomach dropped. This was how it always started. Nina getting the guy alone. But Daniel said, "Actually, I'd prefer to stay with Sarah." "But thank you, Mrs. Morrison." My mother looked surprised. Nina looked stunned. Then Nina recovered with a laugh. "Of course, I'm sure Sarah wants to keep you close. She always was the possessive type." "Not possessive," Daniel said calmly. "Just intentional about where I invest my time." We moved into the living room, where my Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda were already drinking wine. My grandmother was in her favorite chair, wrapped in the shawl I'd sent her for her birthday that she'd apparently never worn. Nina positioned herself on the couch directly across from where Daniel and I sat, crossing her legs in a way that made her dress ride up significantly. She spent the next hour monopolizing the conversation, telling elaborate stories designed to make her sound adventurous and deep. The time she volunteered at an orphanage in Guatemala, she'd gone for a week and spent most of it getting drunk at the resort bar, but she left that part out. The marathon she'd run for charity, she'd walked most of it. Her yoga practice, her meditation retreats, her passion for helping others. It was a performance, and everyone was eating it up. My mother kept saying, "Isn't Nina amazing?" My aunt kept nodding along. My grandmother kept smiling proudly. Daniel listened politely, but he never encouraged her. When she asked him questions, he answered briefly and redirected to someone else. When she laughed and touched his knee, he subtly shifted away. When she leaned forward to give him a better view of her cleavage, he maintained eye contact in that professional way therapists do, acknowledging the person without sexualizing them. I could see Nina's frustration building. She was used to men either falling over themselves to engage with her or getting flustered and awkward. Daniel was neither. He was just professionally polite. At dinner, Nina positioned herself directly across from Daniel. She'd managed to arrange the seating that way, claiming she wanted to get to know my sister's boyfriend better. She spent the entire meal trying to make eye contact with him, asking him questions about his work, his hobbies, his family. She told stories designed to highlight her compassion and sensitivity. When my father told a joke, she laughed too loud and too long, her hand flying to her chest in exaggerated delight. Daniel mostly talked to my grandmother about her garden, asking her specific questions about soil composition and which vegetables grew best in Michigan's climate. He discussed woodworking with my uncle. He asked my mother about her job at the library. When Nina addressed him directly, he responded, but he never sought her out, never asked follow-up questions, never gave her the attention she was so desperately angling for. I watched Nina's agitation grow. Her smile became more forced. Her laugh became more shrill. She kept drinking wine, refilling her glass before it was empty. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room for dessert. My mother had made her famous apple pie, and my aunt had brought pumpkin cheesecake. Nina volunteered to help serve, which meant she spent 10 minutes in the kitchen alone. When she came back, she was carrying 2 plates. She handed one to Daniel with a brilliant smile. "I cut you an extra large slice. You look like a man who appreciates good pie." "Thank you," Daniel said, taking the plate. Nina sat down next to him, not across from him this time, but right next to him on the couch, close enough that their thighs were almost touching. I was on Daniel's other side, suddenly feeling like an intruder in my own relationship. Nina launched into another story, this one about a recent trip to Napa Valley. As she talked, she kept touching Daniel, a hand on his arm when she laughed, fingers brushing his shoulder when she made a point, her knee pressing against his leg. Daniel continued eating his pie, nodding politely but not engaging. When Nina put her hand on his thigh, he calmly picked it up and moved it back to her own lap, then returned to his dessert as if nothing had happened. Nina's face flushed. She laughed, trying to play it off as accidental. "Sorry, I'm such a touchy person. I hope you don't mind. I prefer appropriate physical boundaries," Daniel said simply. "But thank you for understanding." It was such a clinical response, so devoid of flirtation or awkwardness, that Nina didn't know how to react. She sat there for a moment, mouth slightly open, then excused herself to the bathroom. My mother immediately leaned forward. "Daniel, you have to understand, Nina is just very warm and affectionate. She doesn't mean anything by it." "I'm sure she doesn't," Daniel said neutrally. But I saw the look in his eyes. He knew exactly what Nina meant. 20 minutes later, Nina cornered Daniel in the hallway. I was in the kitchen helping my aunt with dishes, but I could see them through the doorway. My heart started pounding. Nina had fixed her makeup, reapplied her lipstick. She stood close to Daniel, her hand pressed flat against his chest. She was speaking quietly, intimately. I saw her lean in, saw her lips move close to his ear. This was it. This was the moment. This was when I'd lose him, just like I'd lost all the others. But Daniel stepped back, creating distance between them. He said something brief, his expression unchanged. Then he walked away, leaving Nina standing alone in the hallway. She stood there for a long moment, her face cycling through emotions, confusion, disbelief, anger. Then she seemed to compose herself and followed him back to the living room. Daniel came into the kitchen and asked if I was ready to go. "It's been lovely meeting everyone," he said to my mother and aunt. "But Sarah and I have an early morning tomorrow." We didn't, but I didn't contradict him. We said our goodbyes. My mother hugged me and whispered, "He's wonderful, dear. Very grounded. You should hold on to this one." As if I'd been the one letting the others go. Nina intercepted us at the door. "Leaving so soon? The night's still young." Her voice was too bright, too cheerful. "Daniel, we never got to finish our conversation." "I think we covered everything," Daniel said politely. "It was nice meeting you, Nina. I hope you have a good evening." He took my hand and guided me out the door. In the car, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "What did she say to you?" In the hallway, Daniel was quiet for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, not starting the car yet. Then he said, "She told me that you were emotionally unstable and jealous. That you've had these paranoid delusions about her for years, that you've accused her of things she never did. She said I seemed like an intelligent, successful man who deserved better than someone who was so damaged and insecure." My stomach dropped, and she gave me her number. She said if I ever wanted to talk to someone who understood what I was going through, dealing with a partner who had psychological issues, I should call her. I felt tears burning in my eyes. Of course she did. "Sarah," Daniel said gently. "Look at me." I turned to face him. "Everything your sister said to me was textbook histrionic personality disorder. The dramatic presentation, the excessive attention-seeking, the inappropriate sexual behavior, the complete lack of genuine empathy." She spent the entire evening displaying classic manipulation tactics, mirroring, love bombing, triangulation, gaslighting. It was like watching a case study come to life. He took my hand, and when I didn't respond the way she expected, when I maintained boundaries and didn't validate her behavior, she immediately tried to pathologize you. She tried to position herself as the healthy, stable one and you as the problem. That's what people with these patterns do when they lose control of the narrative. "What did you say to her?" I asked. Daniel's expression was calm, clinical. I told her that I was a psychologist, not her therapist, but that she might benefit from seeing one. I told her that attempting to seduce your sister's partner to validate your own self-worth was a common histrionic pattern, and that it would only leave her feeling more empty in the long run. I suggested she explore why she needed constant male attention to feel valuable, and why she couldn't tolerate her sister having something she didn't. I stared at him. "You said all that?" I said it in clinical terms, in a calm, non-judgmental tone. "But yes." "How did she react?" "About how you'd expect. Shock first, then anger, then denial. She said I was being unprofessional and cruel. I told her I wasn't acting as a therapist in that moment, just as someone setting a boundary. I said I wasn't interested in her romantically or sexually, that I was in love with you, and that I'd appreciate it if she respected my relationship. I started laughing, not polite laughter, but real, gasping, slightly hysterical laughter. I laughed until tears ran down my face, until my sides hurt. Daniel pulled me close and held me while I cried and laughed and cried again. "Why didn't you fall for it?" I finally asked, my voice muffled against his chest. "She's beautiful. She knows exactly what to say. Every other guy fell for it." Daniel pulled back to look at me. "Because I'm trained to recognize manipulation, Sarah. I see it every day in my practice. I know what genuine connection looks like and what performance looks like. Your sister was performing the entire time. Everything she said and did was calculated for effect. He paused. Also, she's deeply unhappy. You can see it if you know what to look for. The desperation in her eyes, the way she needs validation from everyone in the room, the panic when someone doesn't give her the response she wants. That's not attractive, that's tragic. But she's so beautiful, I said. She's conventionally attractive, yes. But beauty without substance is boring. You're beautiful too, Sarah. But you're also intelligent, funny, genuine, kind. You have depth. You have interests and passions and thoughts of your own. Your sister is a hollow performance. He kissed my forehead. And I'm in love with you, not with a performance. We drove home. I felt lighter than I had in years. Like something heavy I'd been carrying had finally been lifted off my shoulders. I thought that would be the end of it. That we'd go home, have a glass of wine, go to bed, and move on with our lives. That Thanksgiving would just be a story we'd tell someday about the time Daniel met my nightmare family and survived. But Nina wasn't done. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my mother, and she was furious. Sarah Louise Morrison, I cannot believe you. I cannot believe you would do this. Do what? I asked, genuinely confused. Nina has been crying for 2 days straight. She told me what your boyfriend said to her. He called her mentally ill. He said she had a personality disorder. He humiliated her in her own family's home. My defenses went up. He didn't call her anything, Mom. He identified behavioral patterns. There's a difference. He's a guest in our home and he insulted your sister. He set a boundary with someone who was trying to seduce him. I was shouting now. Nina spent the entire night trying to steal another one of my boyfriends, and when it didn't work, she ran crying to you like she always does. That's not what happened. Nina was just being friendly, being welcoming to your boyfriend, and he was cold and rude to her all night. And then he cornered her in the hallway and told her she was mentally disturbed. That's a complete lie. I was pacing now, my heart pounding. Nina cornered him. Nina put her hands on him. Nina gave him her number after telling him I was crazy. Daniel just refused to play her game. You're being ridiculous. Nina would never do that. She was trying to bond with Daniel, to get to know him, because she cares about you. Nina doesn't care about me. She's spent the last 15 years stealing every boyfriend I've ever brought home, and you've let her do it. There was a long silence. Then my mother said, in that cold, disappointed voice she'd perfected, I think you need to examine why you're so threatened by your sister. This jealousy isn't healthy, Sarah. It's destroying your relationships, and now it's destroying our family. I'm threatened by her because she's a boyfriend-stealing psychopath and everyone enables her. That's enough. My mother's voice cracked like a whip. Nina is going through a very difficult time right now. She's seeing a therapist because of anxiety and depression. And instead of supporting her, you and your boyfriend attack her. She's seeing a therapist? That caught me off guard. Yes, she's been going for months. She's struggling, Sarah, and you're making it worse. The guilt crept in, the way it always did. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe Nina was actually trying to get better. Maybe. No, I couldn't let myself fall into that trap again. Mom, if Nina is in therapy, I'm glad. I genuinely hope it helps her. But that doesn't change what she did on Thanksgiving. She tried to seduce Daniel, and when it didn't work, she lied to you about what happened. You're delusional. Your father and I won't tolerate this anymore. Either you apologize to Nina, and Daniel apologizes to Nina, or you're not welcome at Christmas. Fine, I said. The word came out before I could think about it. We won't come to Christmas. My mother went silent. You can't be serious. I am completely serious. I'm done watching Nina manipulate my relationships while everyone pretends it's not happening. I'm done being told I'm the problem when I'm the victim. Daniel is the first person who's ever chosen me over her, and I'm not apologizing for that. Sarah, I hung up. My hands were shaking. I sat down on the couch, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call back, to apologize, to smooth things over the way I always did. But another part of me, a stronger part, was done. Daniel came out of the bedroom. He'd been working on some clinical notes. I heard shouting, everything okay? I told him everything. The phone call, the accusations, the ultimatum. Daniel sat down next to me. I'm sorry. This is my fault. It's not your fault. It's Nina's fault, and my parents' fault for enabling her. Still, I made things harder for you. No, I said firmly. You made things clearer. For the first time in my life, someone saw what Nina was doing and didn't fall for it. That's not making things harder. That's setting me free. He kissed me. We sat on the couch for a long time, just holding each other. Over the next 2 weeks, I got calls and texts from various family members. My father called, trying the reasonable approach, explaining that family was important and I needed to be more understanding. My Aunt Linda sent a long text about how Nina had always looked up to me and my jealousy was hurtful. My Uncle Tom called to say I was being selfish and immature. My cousin Rebecca, who was my age, sent a text that said, Nina's always been jealous of you and now she finally got called out on it. Good for you. That message made me cry. But most surprising was the call from my grandmother. She asked if she could come over to talk. I was nervous. Grandma Helen had always adored Nina, but I said yes. She showed up at my apartment with cookies she'd baked. We sat at my kitchen table and for a long moment, she didn't say anything. She just looked at me with those sharp blue eyes that still saw everything. I owe you an apology, she finally said. I stared at her. What? I've watched Nina hurt you for years. I've watched her take your boyfriends, one after another. I've watched you get smaller and quieter, watched you stop bringing anyone home, watched you pull away from the family. And I said nothing. Her voice cracked. I said nothing because Nina is beautiful and charming, and it was easier to believe you were jealous than to admit we'd raised a girl who didn't know how to be happy for anyone else. Tears were streaming down my face. Grandma, I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I'm sorry. She took my hand. Your young man, Daniel. He saw in 5 minutes what I should have seen years ago. Nina needs help. Real help. Not everyone telling her she's wonderful and making excuses for her. Mom said she's seeing a therapist. She is. Your mother made her go. But Nina isn't taking it seriously. She spends the sessions complaining about how everyone treats her unfairly. Grandma squeezed my hand. I talked to your mother. I told her she needed to stop enabling Nina's behavior. I told her what I saw at Thanksgiving. Nina throwing herself at your boyfriend. Nina trying every trick in the book to get his attention. Your mother didn't want to hear it. She never does. I know. But I'm going to keep trying. Because you deserve better. You've always deserved better. She paused. Daniel seems like a good man. Someone with a strong moral compass. You should hold on to him. I hugged my grandmother, crying into her shoulder like I was a child again. After she left, I felt something shift in my chest. Not everyone in my family was against me. That was something. Christmas came and went. Daniel and I spent it alone, cooking dinner in my apartment and watching old movies. We walked through the snowy neighborhood looking at lights. It was quiet and peaceful and perfect. Then, in early January, something changed. My phone rang. It was my cousin Rebecca. Sarah, you need to come to your parents' house. Right now. What? Why? Just come. Bring Daniel. Trust me. The urgency in her voice scared me. Is someone hurt? No. Just, please come. It's important. Daniel and I drove to my parents' house, my stomach churning the whole way. Rebecca's car was there. So was my grandmother's. And my Uncle Tom's. But I didn't see Nina's red convertible. Rebecca met us at the door. She looked grim. Everyone's in the living room. We walked in to find my mother, my father, my grandmother, my Aunt Linda, my Uncle Tom, and Rebecca all sitting in tense silence. My mother's eyes were red from crying. What's going on? I asked. My father stood up. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. Tired. We need to talk about Nina. My defenses went up immediately. If this is another intervention about how I need to apologize. It's not, Rebecca interrupted. Just sit down, please. Daniel and I sat on the couch. Everyone was looking at me with expressions I couldn't read. Pity? Shame? My mother spoke first, her voice raw. Do you remember David, the man you dated 5 years ago? My heart started pounding. Yes. He called me yesterday. She took a shaky breath. He wanted to apologize to you, but he didn't have your number. He asked me to pass along a message. I waited, my mouth dry. He said, my mother's voice broke. He said he was sorry for how things ended between you two. He said he'd been in therapy for the past 2 years, working through some things, and he realized he'd been manipulated by Nina. The room seemed to tilt. My mother continued, tears streaming down her face now. He said Nina told him that you were cheating on him. That she had proof. She showed him fake text messages, fake emails. She told him you'd been sleeping with multiple men, that everyone knew, that he was a laughingstock. She said if he broke up with you, she'd keep it quiet, that she'd help him save face. I couldn't breathe. He believed her. He broke up with you. And then Nina pursued him, told him she'd always thought he was too good for you, that she could make him happy. My mother was sobbing now. They dated for 3 months. Then Nina got bored and moved on. David said he realized years later, in therapy, what had really happened. He wanted you to know he was sorry. I sat there, frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. After David called, my father said, his voice heavy, I called Jake. Your first boyfriend. Oh God. Jake said something similar. Nina had told him you were planning to break up with him anyway, that you'd been talking about how immature he was, how you wanted to date college guys. She said she felt bad for him, that she wanted to warn him. She said if he wanted someone who appreciated him, she was there. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. Rebecca spoke up. I called Connor and Ethan. They both said the same thing. Nina manipulated them, lied about you, created situations where they thought you were the problem. She showed Connor a fake dating profile she made in your name. She told Ethan you'd been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and were dangerously unstable. My Aunt Linda was crying. Sarah, we didn't know. We didn't know it was this bad. I told you. The words exploded out of me. I told you for years what she was doing and none of you believed me. You told me I was jealous. You told me I was the problem. We know, my father said quietly. We know, and we were wrong. My mother stood up, walked over to me. She knelt in front of the couch, taking my hands. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I chose Nina over you again and again. I made excuses for her. I let her destroy your relationships and blamed you for being hurt by it. She was sobbing so hard she could barely speak. You're my daughter and I failed you. I failed to protect you. I pulled my hands away. Where is Nina? She doesn't know about this, Rebecca said. We planned this intervention without telling her. You need to know something else, my grandmother said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were fierce. I went through Nina's phone. Grandma, I know it was wrong. I don't care. I needed to know the truth. She pulled out a folder. I found messages between Nina and a woman named Jessica. They were talking about Daniel. My blood ran cold. Grandma opened the folder. Nina was planning something. She'd contacted Daniel's workplace, trying to find dirt on him. She'd filed a complaint with the state psychology board, claiming Daniel had acted unethically by diagnosing her without her consent when he wasn't her therapist. Daniel's expression didn't change, but I felt him tense beside me. The complaint was dismissed, Grandma continued. The board reviewed it and determined no ethical violation had occurred. But Nina wasn't done. She was planning to file a police report, claiming Daniel had made her feel threatened at Thanksgiving. She had coached this Jessica woman to corroborate her story. Jesus Christ, I whispered. That's not all. Grandma pulled out more papers. Nina had been stalking Daniel's social media, his professional profiles. She found his ex-wife. I'm not married, Daniel said quietly. Never have been. Nina assumed you were divorced because you're in your 30s. She found a Daniel Harper who's a psychologist in Ohio who went through a messy divorce. She was planning to catfish you, to pretend to be your ex-wife reaching out, to try to dig up dirt she could use against you. I felt sick. When were you going to tell us this? I asked my grandmother. I found it 2 days ago. I called everyone immediately. We've been meeting to figure out what to do. She looked at me with those sharp eyes. We confronted Nina this morning. And? She denied everything at first. Said I'd invaded her privacy, that I had no right to go through her phone. Said she was the victim here, that we were all ganging up on her because we believed your lies. My grandmother's voice was hard. Then I showed her the screenshots. The messages. The proof. And she broke down. My grandmother paused, her jaw tight. But it wasn't real crying. Not at first. It was that performance crying she does, the kind where she can still talk perfectly clearly, where her makeup doesn't run. She tried to explain it away, said she was just venting to a friend, that she never actually planned to do anything. So what happened? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Rebecca leaned forward. I lost it. I told her I'd watched her destroy you for years, and I was done pretending it was normal. I told her she was sick, that she needed serious help, and that if she went through with filing that police report, I would testify against her. I would tell the police everything I'd witnessed. My Uncle Tom spoke up, his voice gruff. He'd always been Nina's defender, the one who said she was just high-spirited and fun. I told her she was a disgrace. That I was ashamed to call her family. That what she'd done to you was unforgivable. Even my Aunt Linda, who'd spent years telling me to be more like Nina, was nodding. I said I'd been blind. That I'd enabled her because it was easier than confronting the truth. But that I was done. And your mother, my grandmother said, looking at my mom, told Nina that she had two choices. She could either check herself into an intensive inpatient therapy program and actually work on her issues, or she was no longer welcome in this family. I stared at my mother. You said that? My mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. I should have said it years ago. I should have protected you. I chose the wrong daughter, over and over again. And I'm so sorry. Where is Nina now? Daniel asked quietly. She's at a facility about 2 hours from here, my father said. It's a psychiatric treatment center that specializes in personality disorders. She checked in yesterday. She'll be there for at least 90 days. I felt like I was in a dream. A surreal, impossible dream where my family was finally seeing the truth. Did she say anything? About me? I asked. My mother's face crumpled. She said terrible things. She said you'd always been jealous of her, that you'd poisoned the family against her, that Daniel had manipulated everyone. She said. My mother could barely get the words out. She said she should have tried harder to destroy your relationship with Daniel, that she should have succeeded like she did with all the others. The room went silent. She admitted it, I said slowly. She actually admitted it. Yes, my father said. When she realized we weren't going to back down, when she saw that we all knew the truth, she stopped pretending. She told us everything, every lie she'd told, every boyfriend she'd stolen, every manipulation. She said it like she was proud of it. And then, Rebecca said, she looked right at your mom and said, you always loved her more anyway. I could see it, so I took everything from her to make it fair. I felt Daniel's hand grip mine tighter. That's when your mother slapped her, my grandmother said matter-of-factly. Mom slapped her? I couldn't believe it. My mother had never hit anyone in her life. My mother nodded, looking almost ashamed. I've never done anything like that before. But hearing her say those things, hearing her admit what she'd done and sound proud of it, something in me just snapped. I slapped her across the face and I told her she was my daughter and I loved her, but I didn't like her. I didn't like the person she'd become. Nina just laughed, my Aunt Linda said quietly. She said, finally you're being honest. And then she started really crying. Not the fake crying. Real, ugly crying. She collapsed on the floor and she just broke. That's when we called the treatment center, my father said. We'd already researched it, had the number ready. They said they could take her immediately. Your grandmother and I drove her there yesterday. I looked at my grandmother. You went with her? Someone had to, Grandma said simply. She's sick, Sarah, really sick. What she's done is unforgivable, but she's still family. And she needs help that we can't give her. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, triumphant. But mostly I just felt exhausted. And sad. Sad for all the years that had been wasted, all the relationships that had been destroyed, all the pain that could have been avoided if someone had just believed me. I know this doesn't fix anything, my father said. I know we can't undo the damage we've done by enabling her. But we want to try to make things right. If you'll let us. I looked around the room at my family. At my mother's tear-stained face. At my father's guilt-ridden expression. At my grandmother's fierce protectiveness. At Rebecca's supportive presence. At my aunt and uncle who looked genuinely remorseful. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Not right away. You let her torture me for 15 years. You made me feel crazy. You made me feel like I was the problem. We know, my mother whispered. And we'll spend the rest of our lives trying to make it up to you. If you'll give us the chance. I looked at Daniel. He squeezed my hand but didn't say anything. This was my choice to make. I need time, I said finally. I need time to process this. All of this. Of course, my father said quickly. Take all the time you need. We'll be here, whenever you're ready. But I want you to know something, I said, my voice getting stronger. Daniel stays. If you want a relationship with me, you accept him. You respect him. You don't make excuses for what Nina tried to do to him. Is that clear? Crystal clear, my grandmother said firmly. Daniel, you're a good man. You protected our girl when we didn't. We owe you a debt we can never repay. Daniel nodded, his professional mask slipping just a bit to show real emotion. I just want Sarah to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted. My mother came closer, kneeling in front of me again. Can I hug you, please? I hesitated, then nodded. She threw her arms around me and sobbed into my shoulder. I let her cry, let her release all the guilt and shame and regret. I didn't cry, I just sat there, feeling strange and disconnected, like I was watching this happen to someone else. When my mother finally pulled back, she looked at me with swollen eyes. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know, I see you now. I see how strong you are, how much you've endured. I see how wrong I was. She looked at Daniel, and I see that you found someone who sees you too. Who values you the way you should have always been valued. We stayed for another hour. They told me more details about the confrontation with Nina, about the treatment center, about their plans to start family therapy themselves to address their enabling behaviors. My grandmother pulled me aside at one point and pressed something into my hand. It was a key. What's this? I asked. Key to my house, she said. I'm changing my will. The house goes to you, not Nina. You've always loved it, always appreciated it. Nina just saw it as something she'd inherit someday. You'll take care of it. Grandma, you don't have to. I want to. Nina will get money for her treatment, for her future, but the house goes to you. You and Daniel can raise your children there someday. She patted my cheek. And yes, I know you haven't talked about marriage or children yet. But I see the way he looks at you. That man's going to marry you. Probably sooner than you think. I hugged her tight, breathing in her familiar scent of lavender and vanilla. When Daniel and I finally left, driving home in silence, I felt like I'd lived an entire lifetime in one afternoon. Everything I believed about my family, about my place in it, had been shattered and rebuilt into something new. Something I didn't quite recognize yet. Are you okay? Daniel asked when we were back at my apartment. I don't know, I said honestly. I think I'm in shock. That's normal. You just had 15 years of gaslighting validated in the span of an hour. Your brain is trying to process a fundamental shift in your reality. Is that your professional opinion? I asked with a weak smile. No, that's my personal observation as someone who loves you. He pulled me close. Do you want to talk about it? Or do you want to just sit and be? Can we just be? We can absolutely just be. We sat on the couch together, Daniel holding me while I stared at nothing, my mind trying to make sense of everything. Eventually, I fell asleep there, exhausted by emotion. I had dreams that night. Dreams where Nina was chasing me through a maze, always just behind me, her laughter echoing off the walls. But when I turned to face her, she'd be crying, reaching out for me, saying, "Why don't you love me? Why did they always love you more?" I woke up with tears on my face. Over the next few weeks, I had to navigate this strange new family dynamic. My mother called every few days, never pushy, just checking in. My father sent me articles he thought I'd find interesting, something he'd never done before. My grandmother invited us to dinner every Sunday. Rebecca and I started meeting for coffee regularly. The hardest part was figuring out how I felt. I'd spent so long being angry, being hurt, being defensive, that I didn't know how to be anything else with my family. Even though they were trying, even though they were genuinely remorseful, I couldn't just flip a switch and trust them again. Daniel suggested I see a therapist. Not because there's anything wrong with you, he said carefully, but because you've been through trauma. Repeated, sustained trauma, and you need help processing it. He was right. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Chen. She was patient and insightful, and she helped me understand that what I'd experienced was a form of abuse. Not physical abuse, but emotional and psychological abuse. Being gaslit by your entire family for years, being told your reality wasn't real, that leaves scars. You're allowed to be angry, Dr. Chen told me. Even if they're apologizing, even if they're trying to change. You're allowed to be angry about what they did to you. I cried in her office more than once. Meanwhile, Nina was in treatment. My mother would give me updates, which I'd accepted on the condition that she kept them brief. Nina was struggling. She tried to leave twice. She'd screamed at the therapists, accused them of not understanding her. But slowly, very slowly, she was starting to engage with the treatment. They're working on helping her develop a sense of self-worth that isn't dependent on male attention or competition with other women, my mother explained during one of our careful, awkward phone calls. She's having to confront some very painful things from her past. I didn't ask what things. I wasn't ready to empathize with Nina yet. Maybe I never would be. In March, 3 months after that family meeting, Nina completed her initial 90-day program. She was being transferred to a longer-term facility for continued treatment. My mother asked if I'd be willing to come to a family therapy session, me, my parents, and Nina, with Nina's treatment team facilitating. I said no immediately. I'm not ready, I told my mother. I'm still working through my own stuff. I can't handle seeing her yet. I understand, my mother said, and she actually did sound understanding. Just know that the invitation is open. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready. Daniel proposed to me in April. We were hiking in the woods, something we'd started doing every weekend. We'd reached the top of a hill with a view of the valley below, and Daniel pulled out a ring. It wasn't a surprise, exactly. We talked about marriage, about our future. But the moment still took my breath away. "Sarah Morrison," he said, "you're the bravest person I've ever met. You survived a family that didn't see you, didn't value you, and you still managed to remain kind and genuine. You didn't let them break you. I want to spend the rest of my life showing you what it's like to be truly seen, truly valued, truly loved." I said yes through tears. We called my family to tell them. My mother cried happy tears. My father congratulated us warmly. My grandmother said, finally. When's the wedding? I'm not getting any younger. No one mentioned Nina. It was like there was this unspoken agreement that she wouldn't be part of this moment. But later that night, my mother called back. Sarah, honey, Nina is asking if she can write you a letter. Her therapist thinks it might be helpful for her recovery. You don't have to read it if you don't want to. But she's asking permission to send it. I thought about it. She can send it, but I'm not promising I'll read it. And I'm not promising I'll respond. That's fair. Thank you for being open to it. The letter arrived a week later. It was thick, at least 10 pages. I left it on my kitchen counter for 3 days, just staring at it. Finally, with Daniel sitting next to me for support, I opened it. Nina's handwriting was shaky, messy, nothing like her usual perfect script. Dear Sarah, it began. I don't know where to start. My therapist says I should start with the truth, so here it is. I hated you. I hated you from the time we were children. I hated that you were smart and I wasn't. I hated that you had real friends while people only liked me because I was pretty. I hated that mom and dad were proud of your grades and your achievements while they just patted me on the head and told me I was pretty. I learned early that being pretty was my only value. When I was 12, a family friend, Uncle Barry, do you remember him? Started touching me in ways that weren't appropriate. I told mom and dad, but they said I must have misunderstood. That Uncle Barry was a good man who would never do something like that. That maybe I'd been dressing inappropriately and given him the wrong idea. So I learned that my body was my fault. That men wanting me was my fault. That my worth was tied to being desirable, but also that being desired made me guilty of something. When I was 14 and you brought home your first boyfriend, I saw the way mom and dad approved of him. I saw the way they looked at you, proud, happy. And I realized that you had something I didn't. You had their respect, their genuine love that wasn't contingent on how you looked. I wanted that. I wanted them to look at me that way. But I didn't know how to earn it. So instead, I decided to take yours. If I could take your boyfriend's, I could prove I was better than you at something. I could prove I had power. Every time I stole a boyfriend from you, I felt powerful for about a week. And then I felt empty. So I had to do it again. And again. It became an addiction. I know that's not an excuse. I'm not offering excuses. I'm just trying to explain what was going on in my head, because I never understood it myself until recently. My therapist says I have histrionic personality disorder, possibly with narcissistic traits. She says it likely developed as a trauma response to childhood sexual abuse and emotional neglect. She says people with my disorder often struggle with genuine emotional connections because we never learned what those looked like. When I met Daniel, and he didn't respond to me the way men usually do, I felt like I was disappearing. Like I wasn't real. His rejection of me felt like a negation of my entire existence. So I tried to destroy him, because if I couldn't have his attention, I needed to at least make him suffer. I needed proof that I still had power. I see now how sick that is. How twisted. I see how much damage I've done to you, to our family, to the men I manipulated. I'm writing this letter not because I expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to take accountability. To name what I did without excuses or justifications. I stole Jake from you by lying to him about you. I made him believe you didn't really care about him. I stole Connor by pretending to be fragile and broken, by making him feel like a hero for saving me from my depression. I stole Ethan by creating a fake emergency where I needed him, then seducing him when he came to help. I stole David by fabricating evidence that you were cheating and then positioning myself as the better option. I tried to steal Daniel by using every manipulation tactic I knew. When it didn't work, I tried to destroy him professionally and legally. I destroyed 15 years of your life because I was too broken to fix my own. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover it, but I don't have better words. I'm going to be in treatment for a long time. Maybe years. I'm told that personality disorders like mine don't get cured. I'll have to manage them for the rest of my life. I'll have to be vigilant about my behaviors, my thought patterns, my need for attention. I heard you got engaged. Congratulations. I mean that sincerely. Daniel is a good man. He saw me for what I was immediately, and he protected you from me. I'm glad you have him. I don't expect to be invited to your wedding. I don't expect to be part of your life again. But I wanted you to know that I see now what I did. I understand the scope of the damage. And I'm truly, genuinely sorry. If you never want to hear from me again, I'll understand. If you want to write back and tell me how much you hate me, I'll understand that too. If you want to just forget I exist, that's also okay. I hope you have a beautiful life, Sarah. I hope you have everything I tried to take from you. You deserve it. Your sister, Nina. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. What do you think? I asked Daniel. He was quiet for a long moment. I think it's a start. A genuine start. The lack of self-pity, the specific accountability, the acknowledgement of her disorder without using it as an excuse. Those are all good signs that she's actually engaging with treatment. But words are easy. Change is hard. She can write a beautiful apology letter and still revert to her old patterns the moment she's under stress. He took my hand. What matters is what you need. Do you want to respond? Do you want to give her a chance? I thought about it for a long time. Days, actually. Finally, I wrote back. A short letter. Nina, thank you for your honesty. I believe that you're sorry. I believe that you're working on yourself. That matters. But I'm not ready to have you in my life yet. Maybe someday, but not now. I need to heal from what you did to me. I need to build a life that isn't defined by your actions. I hope your treatment continues to help you. I hope you find a way to value yourself that doesn't require hurting other people. But I need you to understand that my healing doesn't include you. Not right now, maybe not ever, and that has to be okay. Sarah, I sent the letter and felt a weight lift. I'd said what I needed to say. I'd been clear about my boundaries. The rest was up to Nina. The wedding planning became a welcome distraction. Daniel and I decided on a small ceremony, just close friends and family who'd actually supported us. My parents, my grandmother, Rebecca, my Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda who'd apologized so sincerely. Daniel's family, who were warm and welcoming and everything my family should have been. My mother asked, carefully, if Nina would be invited. No, I said firmly. This is my day, mine and Daniel's, and I'm not spending it worrying about what Nina might do. I understand, my mother said. For what it's worth, I think that's the right choice. The wedding was in June, in my grandmother's garden. It was small and perfect and intimate. I wore a simple dress. Daniel cried when he saw me walking down the aisle. My father, walking beside me, squeezed my hand and whispered, I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. During the reception, my mother pulled me aside. I want to give you something. She handed me a box. Inside was a journal, old, leather-bound, filled with writing. What is this? I asked. It's my journal from when you and Nina were growing up. I want you to read it. Not now, someday, when you're ready. But I want you to see that I did notice what was happening. I did see Nina's behavior. Her voice broke. I just didn't have the courage to address it. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away. I thought if I made excuses for her, she'd grow out of it. I was wrong, and my cowardice hurt you. But I want you to know, I saw you. Even when I wasn't protecting you, I saw you. I hugged her, and this time, I cried too. The months after the wedding were peaceful. Daniel and I settled into married life. I continued therapy with Dr. Chen. I rebuilt relationships with family members slowly, carefully, maintaining firm boundaries. Nina completed another 6 months of treatment and moved into a supervised living facility. She was working part-time at a bookstore, attending outpatient therapy 4 times a week, and participating in a support group for people with personality disorders. My mother would send me occasional updates. Nina was doing better. She'd cut her hair short, stopped wearing makeup every day. She seemed quieter, more genuine. She'd made friends with her roommate, a woman recovering from addiction. In September, nearly a year after that family intervention, Nina asked through my mother if she could meet with me. Just coffee, just the 2 of us. No expectations. I thought about it for a week. I talked to Dr. Chen about it. I talked to Daniel about it. What do you want to do? Daniel asked. I think I want to see her. See if she's really changed. See if there's any possibility of a relationship. Not like before, I'll never trust her like that again. But maybe something. Then do it. But take your time. And leave if you need to. You don't owe her anything. I agreed to meet Nina at a coffee shop, neutral territory. I arrived 15 minutes early, sitting where I could see the door. My heart was pounding. Nina walked in exactly on time. And I almost didn't recognize her. The woman who walked through that door wasn't the Nina I'd known. She wasn't wearing designer clothes or sky-high heels. She was in jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was short and unstyled. She wasn't wearing makeup. She looked ordinary, real. She saw me and her face did something complicated, hope and fear and shame all at once. She walked over slowly, like she was afraid I might run. Hi, she said quietly. Hi, I replied. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. Thank you for agreeing to meet me, Nina said finally. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either. Another silence. You look different, I said. Nina touched her short hair self-consciously. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who I am without all the performance. Turns out I don't really know. She gave a small, sad smile. I'm basically starting from scratch. Learning how to be a person. How's that going? It's hard, really hard. Some days I want to slip back into old patterns because at least I knew how to do that. But my therapist keeps reminding me that those patterns almost destroyed both of us. I nodded. I read about your wedding. Mom showed me pictures. Nina's eyes filled with tears. You looked beautiful, really beautiful, and happy. I'm glad you're happy. Thank you. I know I don't get to be part of that happiness. I know I gave up that right. But I'm still glad it exists. That you found someone who sees you the way you deserve to be seen. I didn't know what to say to that. Nina continued, her voice shaking slightly. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm not even here to ask for a relationship. I just wanted to see you. To tell you in person that I'm trying. I'm really trying to be better. I can see that, I said slowly. You do seem different. I am different. I have to be. The old Nina was destroying everyone around her. She looked down at her hands. I'm learning that I was assaulted as a child, and that I spent my whole life blaming myself for it, trying to control men to feel safe. I'm learning that I equated love with attention, and that I never learned how to have genuine connections with people. I'm learning that I'm deeply, deeply broken, but that broken doesn't have to mean irreparable. We talked for over an hour. It was strange and uncomfortable and painful, but it was also honest. Nina told me about her treatment, about the hard work of therapy, about facing the reality of what she'd done. She didn't make excuses. She didn't minimize. She just told the truth. When we stood to leave, Nina hesitated. Can I hug you? I hesitated too, then nodded. The hug was brief and awkward. But it was real. I don't know if we'll ever be close, I said. I don't know if I can fully forgive you. But I'm willing to see where this goes. Slowly, Nina nodded, tears streaming down her face. Slowly is good. Slowly is more than I deserve. We started meeting once a month. Coffee, always in public, always with an endpoint. The conversations were careful, measured. Nina would tell me about her therapy, her job, her new life. I would tell her superficial things about my life, safe things. It wasn't a sisterly relationship. It might never be, but it was something. Daniel asked me once if I was doing it for me or for Nina. For me, I said. I need to see if she can really change. I need to see if there's a possibility of having a sister. And I need to know that I tried. That I gave her a chance after she did the work to deserve one. By Christmas, I invited Nina to my grandmother's house for dinner. The whole family was nervous. Nina showed up in simple clothes, bearing a small gift she'd clearly spent time choosing, a book she thought I'd like based on our conversations. She was quiet during dinner. Polite, she complimented the food, asked people about their lives, and didn't make everything about her. When my mother tried to fawn over her, Nina gently redirected the attention to others. It was surreal. After dinner, as we were cleaning up, Nina came into the kitchen where I was washing dishes. Thank you for inviting me, she said quietly. I know it was a risk. It was, I agreed. I want you to know, I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I've changed. Not just to you, but to myself. Because I never want to be that person again. I looked at her, really looked at her. And I saw something I'd never seen before in Nina's eyes, genuine humility. Genuine self-awareness. I believe you, I said. And I did. A year later, Daniel and I were having dinner at a restaurant when I saw Nina across the room. She was on a date, with a woman, which was a surprise. But what wasn't a surprise was how different she looked. She was laughing, but it wasn't that performed laugh I'd grown up hearing. It was real, warm. Her date said something and Nina's face lit up with genuine joy. She reached across the table and took the woman's hand, and there was nothing calculated about it. It was just, tender. That's Nina, I told Daniel. Should we say hello? I thought about it. No, let her have this moment. She's earned it. We finished our dinner and left without interrupting her. But I felt something shift in my chest. Hope, maybe. That Nina was really building a new life. That change was actually possible. 3 years after that Thanksgiving dinner when Daniel met my family, I found out I was pregnant. I called my mother first. She cried happy tears. I called my grandmother second. She said, finally, I'm going to be a great grandmother. What took you so long? And then, carefully, I called Nina. Hi, she said, sounding surprised. I didn't usually call her. We still mostly did scheduled meetings. I have news, I said. I'm pregnant. There was a long silence. Then Nina said, voice thick with emotion, Sarah, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you. Another pause. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think I could be part of the baby's life? I know I don't deserve it. I know I've done terrible things. But I'm better now. I'm really better. And I promise I would never, ever do anything to hurt your child or your family. I'd been expecting this question. I'd been preparing for it. I think, I said slowly, that you can be Aunt Nina. But there will be boundaries. And if you ever cross those boundaries, you're out. Do you understand? I understand. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for giving me a chance to be part of something beautiful. When my daughter was born, Nina sent flowers and a card. She didn't ask to visit right away. She waited until I invited her, 3 weeks later. She came bearing a children's book and a handmade blanket she'd crocheted herself. She held my daughter carefully, reverently, and there were tears in her eyes. She's perfect, Nina whispered. She looks like you. She looks like Dad, actually, I said. Nina laughed, that real laugh again. Yeah, she does. We sat together in my living room, Nina holding my sleeping daughter, and for the first time in our lives, I felt like we might actually be sisters. Not the sisters we should have been all along. We couldn't get that back. But maybe sisters who'd been through war and somehow survived. Who'd found a way to build something new from the ruins. I'm proud of you, I told Nina. For doing the work. For really changing. Nina looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for not giving up on me entirely. You did the hard part, I said. You chose to change. I just chose to witness it. My daughter stirred in Nina's arms, and Nina handed her back to me carefully. As I held my baby, watching my sister watch us with genuine love in her eyes, I realized something. This was my revenge, not Nina's failure at Thanksgiving. Not the family intervention, not even her breakdown in treatment. This, building a beautiful life, having a family of my own, being happy despite everything she'd tried to take from me, this was the revenge. And the fact that Nina could witness my happiness now, could be happy for me genuinely, without jealousy or manipulation, that was the victory. I'd won, not by destroying her, but by refusing to let her destroy me. Daniel came home from work and found us there, me, Nina, and the baby. He kissed me, then nodded at Nina. Good to see you, Nina. You too, Daniel, she said. And then, quietly, thank you for protecting her. When I couldn't protect myself from myself. Daniel just nodded. There was nothing more to say. That night, after Nina left and the baby was asleep, Daniel and I sat on the couch together. Are you happy? He asked me. I'm happy, I said. And I meant it. I'd spent so many years being defined by Nina's cruelty, by my family's failure to protect me, by the boyfriends I'd lost. But I wasn't defined by those things anymore. I was defined by the life I'd built. The man I'd married. The daughter I was raising. The family I'd rebuilt on my own terms. The sister I'd given a chance to earn back trust. That was my story now. Not the story of what was taken from me, but the story of what I'd created despite it all. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all. Subscribe for more stories like this.